Hello and welcome to Mindscapes, a series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today is a remarkable activist woman who walked out of the Indian civil service 25 years ago to carve out a niche for herself, working for the real people of India. She has most recently been in the news as an activist for the right to information campaigns. I'm delighted to welcome Aruna Roy. Aruna, welcome. 25 years ago, what prompted you to pack your bags and leave and move away from the power, the influence of the civil service, the Indian administrative service, and shall we say the romanticism that some people did share, that this was the way to change India?
But I suppose there's no single reason why I left the IAS, and after 7 years I realized that there was no way you could work any idea to a logical end living and working in the IAS. Before you really understood what you were doing, you were transferred out in any case. And the world is much larger than the civil service, and I realized that people whom I met in the villages, with whom one could have built up, or citizens of any town or city with whom one could have built up an agenda for participation in the country's future, could never ever be continued with. Apart from that, within the administration I saw a lot of negatives, and I felt that fighting from within would not solve it, and I really felt the power lay outside of the civil service.
The fact that you were in the service was a tremendous personal achievement, and it was seen and experienced as such by a lot of people at that time. And yet you were able to walk away from it and go and work at a village in a small community at Telonia with your husband at that time. What were some of the real issues that came up for you, and perhaps you could talk briefly about what the personal struggles and adjustments for you were, and the processes of learning?
I'll take the second question first. When I went to rural Rajasthan for the first time, I went with a fair deal of arrogance. I thought I had many answers and people didn't have the answers, and I was there to help them. And when I met the first community and I had my first interaction with them, they didn't seem particularly impressed that I had come there to help. Well, you come. I didn't ask you to come. It's okay. You take your place in the normal run of beings and we'll talk to you. As a woman, I had a handicap in patriarchal Rajasthan because they don't even look you in the eye when they talk to you. So with the men, I had a special set of problems, but even with women, it was no great thing for them. They couldn't even imagine a collector or an Indian administrative service officer. It was outside the ken of their life view. Then I realized that the people whom I thought knew nothing had a lot of strengths which I simply didn't have, and a logic and a knowledge base. And that's when I started questioning in myself and in the whole educational system which has given me this arrogance, that Aristotelian logic is everything, that outside of Aristotle and his logical pattern, nothing exists. So if you don't think in the absolute syllogistical pattern, you don't think at all. Phenomenal thought patterns, phenomenal understanding, but not packaged in the way I wanted it packaged, not given to me in 5 minutes or 3 minutes. I had to give them space and time, and there was fantastic reasoning, there was great strength, and there was great political understanding and social understanding of their own realities, and also the limitations of their worldview. Once you understand this, and once you feel truly an equal, where you have one set of skills and they have another set of skills, that I may have literacy and others have all kinds of other strengths. The way wage work has been described, for instance, as unskilled labor. I can't take a Genti or a Pavda, which is the implements of digging. I tried for 10 days and they said to me, why don't you go away? Because I couldn't dig a foot of earth where they had to dig 8 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet they had to do in a day. I couldn't do a foot. So the definition of skill, because I define skills, my skill has paramount value and their skills is nothing. So all kinds of thought patterns started developing in me as because of relating to them. And one of my friends in the village said, "Benji, aapka to nakal hai, hamara to akal hai," which was true because they had to store everything in their minds. Then when I sat with them, I realized for the first time that even the definition of what needed to be done had to come from them and not from me.
This was your learning, and in what ways and in what satisfactions, and how do you feel you were able to contribute to them? What did you have to? I mean, this is the question we should really ask them, but you're here to tell us what you think.
I think now there is a different universe which I represented, which rules them, which is the ruling elite, which is the state, which is the mumbo jumbo they don't understand, which comes out of files, which comes out of law books, which comes out of institutions of justice, which comes out of ruling apparatus. To familiarize them with all of that and take away the fear of these structures, I think, was my primary contribution, because I don't have time to go through the details of various experiences. So I'll go to issues on which I think the fear of a police station, the fear of a collector, the fear of a thanedar, a fear of a constable, the fear of the patwari, the fear of the tehsildar, the fear of the tools he uses, because those tools inflict so much pain on them that they understand, they're afraid of those tools. I think principally to understand those tools and how they are used, because they're very simple, they're not complicated. To demystify those tools, and then to understand how power could be redefined for them and fought for. For instance, I remember how whenever I went to a women's group, they always talked in Rajasthan about famine. And in the beginning I couldn't understand. But for them, famine means minimum wages or wages paid on famine relief works, and they're always, because in a drought prone area you need employment, and they used to migrate in large numbers. So for them, continuous employment was important. So the whole issue of wage became very important. And so bringing the notion and the fact of a statutory minimum wage to them, and they were amazed that such a thing existed of which they knew nothing. And then we built up this whole business of looking at work, at employment, at wage. And then when I was still working at Tilonia, Norati organized this massive strike of 500 people in a village called Harmada, and people didn't take their wages. And I didn't expect such a phenomenal reaction to a series of informal and formal structures through which they'd learned about minimum wages. So this whole history of understanding the links between striking for minimum wages in a small village in Rajasthan and the impact of a judgment in the Supreme Court. And Norati, who's not even literate, she's made herself literate in the last few years, now knows the link between what she did there and the impact on law in the nation. So if you can relate your actions to a larger issue, then you feel an inner strength, which is great. So I learned that if these links are specifically clarified, it's wonderful. So also in crafts, so also in literacy, so also in gender issues, so also in technology. How do you take what is your technology? If middle class, the Department of Science and Technology decides you need cooking apparatus, women need cooking apparatus to lessen drudgery. Women say no, we want weeding instruments. We want instruments where it will be easier for us to carry loads. And till today, there has been no addressing of those issues in technology. Why?
Tell me that and sort of having watched and admired your work over a long span of time, you seem to be entering a new phase, shall I say, of your activism, where you spent a block of time in the community, in communities in rural India and in Bharat as opposed to India and in the real India. And in recent years you seem to be coming sort of out of there as sort of a spokesperson and an activist for their agendas and their causes into the larger community. So we see more of you and we hear more of you now articulating those causes. To what degree do you feel that your voice is being heard in India?
Well, about 13 years ago, four of us friends went and started working in Rajsamand district, and now I work with Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, which is a people's organization, and we really fashioned this organization together. We defined it together, and the name was chosen by the people of that area. It was born on the 1st of May 1990. You see, I think life for me has been a search for seeing how the external reality of my life and the reality of people's lives can come together logically to address democracy and politics and see how their own participation in it can improve their lives. See, everyone goes through all these series of questions because this, if you look at this country, there's so many failures and so many things that have not happened that anybody who's my age, who's just born just before independence, have a lot of questions to ask ourselves and a lot of questions to ask our peers who brought this country to what it is today. But these questions have to be addressed, I don't think individually, but collectively with people whom it has largely affected. So the Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan has really done basically collective addressing of these issues, having understood the notion of equality in Tilonia, having understood how people can think in Tilonia, having understood how people are very powerful in Tilonia, but not agreeing with SWRC about the development agenda, not agreeing with SWRC the fact that people are apolitical, which is how they describe themselves then, not today. Not agreeing with all that, I left SWRC in 1983. So I took with me an understanding of politics which is much larger than the vote, much larger than a political party, but an understanding that democracy must live and stay in this country for people, for the poor people to access anything at all. For them, it is the most important political structure. But unfortunately, even till today, they've been used as numbers in a game. They haven't understood their own power. So they had to understand their own power, understand how they wanted to access and use that power to impact the state, to get from the state what they want, not be against the state, because we are working within the constitutional paradigm. We want the state to exist, but we want the state to perform as we want it to perform, not what the state wants, not perform what the state wants us to perform.
And hence the significance of your effort and work on the right to information.
Yes,
So tell
that's
us
how
about
it was born, because again in a minimum wage struggle, when people wanted to know, how is it that I haven't got my minimum wage? Dear BDOs and the Tehsildars and the SDMs and all the CEOs, the Chief Executive Officers, told us that a muster roll was a secret document. That's when my friends, they said to me, कि ये दस्तावेज बाहर नहीं निकलेंगे तो हम कभी अपनी सच्चाई तो लोगों के सामने नहीं रख सकते, ये बहुत ज़बरदस्त ज़रूरत है. The term right to information may have come from people like me, but the importance of that document to prove that they had said the right thing, to access the basic minimum needs, came from their own understanding, and thereby began a big and very exciting struggle in which we've been able to bring together the facts of good governance as people see it, a right to govern themselves, which people must understand, the responsibilities of governance, which is not that you can just, as they say in Rajasthan, leave it, hevji they say, leave it to somebody else to do. It's our responsibility. So, and it also people of my class, now people whom I was born in, the class I was born in, people who feel that their business is to run their own business, you know, whether it's intellectual business or money business or fashion business, and that the country will run itself. It can't in a democracy. We have to spare some time to make it run. We have to question it. We have to make it be accountable to us. We have to make it give answers. And this I have learned, not from my peers, but from those poor people who understood it perfectly. They articulated it in a different way, but this is what they meant. So the Right to Information campaign was born, and that's why the power of that campaign, and that's how it is spread. Because when Nikhil Chakravarti came to us in our first dharna in 1996, he saw the seeds of a national campaign, and he told us that for me today, I see what I saw in the small meetings pre-independence, where the independence struggle began. Then we fought for freedom from the white man. Today we are going to fight for freedom from the corruption which is ruining our country, which is spread all over from our own people. So that's when the germs of the national campaign were born in our minds. And of course people define this whole thing very simply. Hamara paisa, hamara hisab. If in a home you give your child 10 rupees, you ask him to give the accounts. This is public money, which is my money. And if that public money is being misspent, the government is accountable to us. It has to tell us how the money has been spent. And amazingly dramatic things have happened, you know. Recently we had a public hearing in Bheem on the 6th of April. After we got some the Chief Minister of Rajasthan promised us something. We went into a long struggle. We got the Panchayati Raj rules amended, and now we are entitled to access Panchayati Raj documents in Rajasthan. We had this public hearing, and you would be amazed. There were two buildings which are absolutely similar. In one building in Bhim Panchayat, the Sarpanch has billed some 50,000 rupees. In one, it's double the amount. We simply couldn't understand. So when we looked at the details of the accounts, we found out that in a double-storied building, in the second building, they had billed for foundation. How can you dig a foundation for an already existing building? Very obvious things, you know. So because there is this absolute devilry, I would say, that they think that they can do anything and get away with it, we have to monitor our own lives. And I think no vigilance commission, no anti-corruption department can do it, because the system is corrupt everywhere and they don't have the time or the interest.
Why don't you just sort of, for our viewers, define what is the Right to Information Bill and the status of the Act, and that it's been implemented in Rajasthan, and what the implications of that are?
Well, the campaign was born in Rajasthan, but the two governments that first enacted the bill were Tamil Nadu and Goa, because the national campaign was born in Delhi. The Press Council and the Press Institute got involved. We formulated a bill in Delhi, which became our model bill, in which 250 people interacted, including ex-members of the bench, members of the bar, and activists, and editors of newspapers, and we formulated a bill, and civil servants, because the first draft was made in Mussoorie in the National Academy of Administration. So that bill has gone through many avatars.
And what does it enable, essentially?
That enables, that bill, which has not been passed, which is still lying with the union government, in which the most important thing that we defined was public money spent for a public purpose by anybody should be transparent, and the people of that will be accountable to the organization that spends will be accountable to the people of this country, and that whoever doesn't give this information should be punishable. A small punishment, nevertheless, a punishment, and we should also know reasons for which certain decisions were being taken. The government, in its draft bill, the one that I saw, which was amended by them, they do not agree that you should see the left side of the file. They are willing to show you the right side of the file.
And they're the not willing to. Are their notings, right?
The notings they are not willing to let us see. They are also not willing to let us access anything but the government. All private institutions have been taken out. We were very keen that voluntary organizations, trade unions, everybody be in it. Voluntary organizations now have a history of corruption in this country as well. So we wanted all the corrupt organizations also to be transparent and accountable to people they were working with. Because we don't see any difference between government and non-government. It's public money and it's accountability. But the government has removed private institutions and kept only the government. The Rajasthan bill then was formulated over the last year by the campaign, because the present Chief Minister asked us to formulate the bill. We formulated the bill and gave it to him in May last year, and since then the bill has been revised. It's been all kinds of additions and subtractions have taken place. It was placed and passed in the Assembly on the 1st. We have a lot to quarrel with in the bill, but that the Rajasthan government has passed the bill is something that we feel is a landmark. And for the first time, a bill which has been made on the demands of people at large in the campaign has been accepted by the government as necessary. That itself is a landmark. Transparency of government functioning, for instance, I'll say it in everyday terms. You want to know exactly why your gas has not been connected, or your telephone has not been connected, or why there are holes in your road, or why you can't access, certificates, why your child's examination papers cannot be seen. I mean, n number of ways we need transparency. So that bill gives you the entitlement in a very broad spectrum for all government functions. You can access papers about PWD, the forest, about NDMC here in Delhi, if they pass the union bill, but in Rajasthan we can access corporation papers. We can find out in colonies that are set up how much we have to pay for what. There will be straightforward transactions. It will bring down levels of corruption. But it also brings onto us the responsibility for using the Act, and therefore citizens will have to understand that unless they participate in the process of questioning, they can't get what they deserve. That is in just the most important thing. I'll give you a very small example. In a PDS, in a public distribution system, in a ration shop, after they made everything public in Madhya Pradesh, in Sarguja district, the left side, the register, they took a photocopy of the register and the photocopy of the ration card. In the ration card, you received no rice. And in the register, you've been issued kilos of rice. Where has the rice gone? Straightforward case. So it's a very big deterrent on government, on misspending the money, on misappropriation of the money, and it keeps a check on what they are doing. And we really want our own government to function properly, and it's our responsibility, and good civil servants and enlightened politicians should welcome this instead of seeing it as something negative.
Well, to sort of complete our conversation, I'm going to go back a little bit because you have mentioned SWRC in Telonia. Will you tell us briefly about the work there and why you felt that you wanted to leave that and move on to a more, well, let's say another role for yourself?
I think life and institutions should be pluralistic. There's no one way to any goal. And I definitely do not think that, reform will come from outside or from above. Any genuine change has to come from below. And where you have a development agenda, you need money. And money comes from government with a prefixed, non-negotiable agenda. It comes from abroad, maybe with something else. But money, when it comes and when organizations deal with that kind of money, people like me spend masses of their time becoming managers of that money. And there is very little time left there are others who do it, but there's maybe very little time for people to do that kind of work. And I had no inclination, having left management in the IAS, to become another manager at one level. Though it's a necessary role, and I think some people should do it, but I didn't want to do it. Second reason was that I believed, and I still believe, that the definition of politics is a very large definition for me. It is not centered around one vote in 5 years and a political party. For me, politics is the understanding of mechanisms of power and of accessing power and becoming empowered. And I think my understanding of politics became very different from the understanding of politics, development politics that existed in SWRC. In fact, they called themselves apolitical at that time, and I said, no, I am a political animal and I work within the paradigm of politics.
Well, what was SWRC doing? Just
SWRC was a development,
what is the project? Yes.
Very good development organization which works with education, which works with women, which works with handicrafts, which works with all these issues, and has training programs and works with projects and so on for their betterment. But MKSS, where I work now, Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, we don't take any funding. We now exist on donations from various friends. Every single campaign is being supported by public funds. We are accountable and answerable to the people directly. If our campaign doesn't get funded, we know we are on a rotten campaign. In the first campaign on right to information, when we sat on Dharna in '96, we got 86,000 rupees from people in public donations. 2 rupees, 3 rupees, 4 rupees, and people saying, please don't get up from the Dharna. Free vegetables in Beawar, free water, where water has to be paid for, free video camera, free dharamshalas were open to us. So I feel any public action and political reform or political changes that we want should be with the complete acceptance and financial support also of the community. And our salaries we ourselves take minimum wages. Whoever gives us money, we put it away. We draw minimum wages as salary. We are totally transparent, accountable. We have stated what we get, including bank account numbers. Anyone can ask any question and we are answerable. But I feel that this kind of thing promotes a questioning on the basic principles of political functioning without entering a debate only at the time of election as to whom should you vote for, and then getting into a frenzy from one party to the other. There's a very famous folk story in Rajasthan which Bijji, Vijayadan Deta, famous writer now in Rajasthan, has rewritten for all of us. It's a story about the very benign king who gave you an option to choose your own punishment between the eating 100 onions or getting beaten 100 times on the head by a slipper. And we eat a few. The chap, he thought he was extremely egalitarian. So this man whom he asked said, okay, he thought, looked at everybody and said, I'd rather eat the onions. So he ate the onions. 20 onions and his mouth was burning. He said, I'd rather get beaten on the head. 10 times beaten on the head, was blistering, burning, bleeding. He said, I'd rather eat the onions. This is what happens to us at the time of election. We switch from one party to the other. We vote this one into power. We get disillusioned. We vote the other into power without looking at the reasons why things are going wrong. And I think the Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan and the Right to Information campaign looks at the ethics of functioning, of public ethics, of democracy, and how we should govern ourselves, and I think that's why it has gained whatever power it has.
Well, Aruna, thank you very much. This has been a great privilege.
Thank you, Rajiv.